We're going to talk in this video about what I feel like is the best way to remember the unit circle. We need to start with this chart that has sine, cosine, and tangent on it and write the three reference angles that we're going to have to remember. Those would be pi over 6, pi over 4, and pi over 3. You'll want to write them in that order: pi over 6, pi over 4, pi over 3. Sine theta is an increasing function, which means that it starts off with 1 over 2 and then increases to square root of 2 over 2 and finally to square root of 3 over 2. Cosine is the cofunction of sine, so that means it's going to have the same values just in reverse order. So it will start with square root of 3 over 2, decrease to square root of 2 over 2, and then end with 1 over 2. Tangent, as we know, is sine theta divided by cosine theta. So to find the tangent of pi over 6, all I really need to do is divide 1/2 by square root of 3 over 2. But because those two numbers both have the same denominator, I really only need to divide their numerators. And so tangent of pi over 6 is going to be 1 over the square root of 3, which we write rationalized as the square root of 3 over 3. For tangent of pi over 4, I will divide square root of 2 by square root of 2, and that's simply going to give me 1. And for pi over 3, I will divide square root of 3 divided by 1, which is going to give me square root of 3. So this is the table that you need to memorize. Sine increases from 1 over 2 to square root of 2 over 2 to square root of 3 over 2. Cosine has the same numbers, just in decreasing order. And then tangent theta is the sine number divided by the cosine number for that particular angle. Now, that will help you for any angle that is inside of a quadrant. So keep that in mind for a little bit later in the video. For any angle that is not on a quadrant, in a quadrant, so it is on an axis, for example, 0, or pi over 2, or pi, or 3 pi over 2, or any angle like it, we're going to have to remember 4 points that lie on the unit circle. At 0, remember that the unit circle has a radius of 1, and so from the center, if that radius is 1, this is going to be the point 1, 0. At pi over 2, we're going to have the point 0, 1. At pi, we will have the point -1, 0. And at the bottom of the unit circle, that will have the coordinate points 0 and 1. Now, how does that help us answer questions? Well, let's take a look at some examples to see if we can figure this out. Let's start with number 1 that says sine of 2 pi over 3. What we're going to need to know is the reference angle for that. And all you have to do when it's in radians is look at the denominator. So because the denominator here is 3, I know that I'm going to be working with this column right here for this problem. Since it says sine, I know that the value is going to be square root of 3 over 2. The only thing that you really have to think about, a little challenging, is the number going to be positive or negative? And that is determined by all students take calculus. And so this acronym tells us that in quadrant 1, every trig function is positive. In quadrant 2, sine is positive and everything else is negative. In quadrant 3, tangent is positive and all of the others are negative. Cosine is positive in quadrant 4, and all of the others are negative. So 2 pi over 3 is the same as like 0.666 pi, which is going to lie in quadrant 2. And so sine in quadrant 2 is positive because the reference angle is over 3. Sine of pi over 3 is the square root of 3 over 2, and so this value will be square root of 3 over 2. Let's look at number 3. We have sine of 7 pi over 6. Well, 7 over 6 is the same as 1 and 1/6. And so that is going to put me in quadrant 3, since this is 1 pi, and this right here is 1.5 pi. And 1 and 1/6 is in between 1.5. 1 and 1.5. So the next thing is, we know that because it's in quadrant 3 and it's sine, that the answer here is going to be negative, and then the reference angle is pi over 6, and looking at my chart, the sine of pi over 6 is right here. It is 1/2, and so the answer to sine of 7 pi over 6 will be -1/2. Cosine of 11 pi over 6, well, 11 pi over 6 is the same as 1 and 5/6. And so that means that this is going to be in quadrant 4, where cosine is positive. The reference angle is pi over 6, and cosine of pi over 6 is the square root of 3 over 2. For number 7, tangent of pi over 6 is just on our chart, so we automatically have that memorized. It's the square root of 3 over 3. For tangent of 4 pi over 3, 4 over 3 is the same as 1 and 1/3, which is going to put you into quadrant 3. We know that tangent in quadrant 3 is positive, and the reference angle is pi over 3. And the tangent of pi over 3 is the square root of 3. And so the answer here will be positive square root of 3. For number 2, cosine of 3 pi over 2, 3 pi over 2 is one of our angles that's on an axis. It is right down here at the bottom of the circle. And so what I've got to remember is that for all of these ordered pairs, x and y, that the cosine of theta is the x and the sine of theta is the y. And so when I look at the point at 3 pi over 2, that would be 0, 1, and cosine is asking for the x coordinate, which will be 0. For number 4, sine of pi over 2. Pi over 2 is at the top of the unit circle, and so I'm going to use this chart to help me here. This is irrelevant for this particular problem, just like it was on number 2. For number 4, sine of pi over 2 is up here. That's the point 0, 1, and sine is the y coordinate, and so therefore sine of pi over 2 is equal to positive 1. For tangent of 5 pi over 4, we see that the 5 over 4 is the same as 1 and 1/4, which is going to put us into quadrant 3. In quadrant 3, tangent is positive. The reference angle is pi over 4, and the tangent of pi over 4 is equal to 1 from our chart. Cosine of 0, 0 is on an axis, and so again we need to look back to here for the ordered pair at 0, which is 1, 0. Cosine is the x-coordinate, and so cosine of 0 will be 1. Finally, sine of 5 pi over 3. We know that 5 over 3 is the same as 1 and 2/3, which is bigger than 1 1/2, and so that's going to put us into quadrant 4. Sine in quadrant 4 is negative because that's the quadrant where cosine is positive and sine is negative. The reference angle is pi over 3, and we see that sine of pi over 3 is the square root of 3 over 2, and so the answer here will be negative square root of 3 over 2. And so if you can remember how to draw this chart from scratch, remembering that sine increases from 1 to 2 to 3 in the numerator with a square root over it, cosine is the same values except it goes in reverse order, and tangent theta is sine theta divided by cosine theta, and then remember the 4 ordered pairs on the angles that are on an axis, and that the x-coordinate is the cosine and the y-coordinate is the sine. You have a leg up on learning the unit circle. And so now that you've had a chance to see that, let's see if you can practice some problems on your own by pausing the video and trying these yourself. Here's the answers to the practice problems. Hope you guys feel a little bit better about answering questions involving the unit circle.